Good afternoon, folks. Thank you so much for taking the time to participate in this Cherry Bekaert Nintex webinar on driving value from your business processes. We welcome you and thank you again for taking your time out of your busy schedule. I appreciate it. My name is John Schrader, and I'm also joined by a couple colleagues and also Cherry Bekaert from Nintex. So we welcome you to this Nintex and driving value from your business processes. So thank you for taking the time. On your organization's journey of forced digital transformation during the pandemic, I'm sure there has been a lot of talk around work from anywhere and digitizing or automating a lot of your business processes. And so you have come to the right place as we talk through business process automation and digitizing and the whole digital transformation around that. We're going to spend the whole Nintex platform is a platform got a lot of tools as part of it, but we're going to spend most of our time talking about the forms and the workflow engine. But that's what the use cases are going to be today. But it's a whole platform, as Jessie will kind of take us through a little bit later. Couple housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone in this session has been placed on mute, but please feel free to ask questions in the GoToMeeting chat. There's a question area or a chat area. Aaron Hillsman, my colleague, will be reviewing those questions and may interject if they're poignant, or we can save them to the end. There will also be kind of at the end of our session and our demonstration a time of Q&A. So yeah, so please feel free to ask questions along the way, and we'll get to them, I promise. So just as a high-level agenda for today's webinar, I'll take you through a few slides about Cherry Bekaert Digital Advisory, and then Jessie will take you through some slides around Nintex and the high-level capabilities in the Nintex platform. And then I will take us through some business use cases where we have used the Nintex suite of products in real life, and that way we can you can see kind of for real how the Nintex platform works. Jessie and my job today is three things: to educate you on the power of the Nintex platform, to entertain you a little bit, just because the last thing you want to do is sit through some really dry webinar session. And then lastly is to really excite you and energize you about making your organization better through streamlined business processes, business automation, system integrations, things like that. So hopefully we can accomplish all three of those jobs or those tasks today, but we hope that you learn something, you get something out of it, and we get you excited about it. So thanks again for joining us. Just as background, just to get started, just a little bit about me. Again, my name is John Schrader. I lead the Cherry Bekaert digital practice around business applications, and that is everything around software solutions and business process automation, software development, integrations, things like that. So I live in, just on a personal note, my lovely wife and I live in beautiful Greenville, South Carolina, the upstate of South Carolina, and we have 3 children. And so we love South Carolina, but today I'm actually coming to you from the Raleigh office, Raleigh, North Carolina. Just a little background about my career. I started in software development and consulting, and then went to work for Bank of America in the consumer bank technology and architecture group, and then was a senior director of technology at an apparel company for 6 years, and then before joining Cherry Bekaert about 3 years ago. So been part of Cherry Bekaert Digital Advisory now for almost 3 years, and love every minute of it. So just a little bit background about me. So just some background on Cherry Bekaert Digital Advisory. Cherry Bekaert as a whole is a tax, audit, advisory, consulting group, and I'm within the digital space, within the software and digital space. And what we primarily focus on is, this is kind of our mission statement within our group. So We're a practice of dedicated industry, finance, and digital professionals who our singular purpose is to help our clients improve the overall performance and health of their organizations. And we do that through intelligent and intentional application of prescriptive guidance, process automation, and business intelligence to help increase productivity and accuracy and maximize financial outcomes. So we really do want to help our clients succeed, and we're not just focused on the technology, we are focused on true digital transformation around people and processes and technology. We're kind of structured in 5 different segments. So you've got strategy and process, which is going to be around a lot of process optimization, software identification and evaluations, business process requirements, IT alignment. That's part of our group. And then the business applications team is the team that I lead, which is around the workflow automation, software development, software solutions, working closely with the strategy and process group. And then we've got the analytics and business intelligence team, and they do a lot around dashboarding and reports and predictive and prescriptive and AI and BI and all those fancy words. And then we've got infrastructure group that does a lot of on-premise, cloud, and hybrid type solutions. And then we've got fractional CIO or CXO services, so CIO, CTO, CISO, that sort of thing. So that's a little bit about the digital practice within Cherry Bekaert. A lot of what we do at our clients are spread across a lot of different industries. We'll get to that a little bit later in today's webinar, but these are some of the ones that we focus on, but we really do have a lot of clients in all different industries, and the solutions that we build are really industry agnostic, so they can work in any industry, but these are some of the ones that we've done work with and focused on. So let me move to the next slide, and just technology should be a pillar in every organization, but it should really drive, results, drive for results. So these are some of the key takeaways or bullet points that we try and focus on with our clients is, better business decisions, reduce risk, facilitate growth, make a competitive advantage, maximize financial performance, cut costs, whatever it might be. So we try and focus on the business side of things and not just the technology side. So that's just a little bit about Cherry Bekaert and the digital practice. Now I'd like to kind of turn it over to my colleague Jesse with Nintex. And Nintex is really one of the key platforms that we use for digital transformation. So Jesse, take it away.
All right. Yeah, okay. So we will get right into who am I? So thanks, John. Appreciate it. Happy to be here. Happy to chat with everybody. Again, I like to keep these kind of more conversational, lighthearted, right? Because the last thing we all want to do is sit here and be bored to death. So hopefully we learn something. So my name is Cherry Bekaert. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Nintex. I've been working with Nintex for the better part of 6 years. I was actually a customer of Nintex, so really cool because I worked as a SharePoint developer and application architect, used Nintex for a variety of automation needs, going through a lot of migrations from on-prem into the cloud, things like that. So obviously Nintex was a big part of what I did. Long story short, here I am now. I get to work with Nintex every day and do these wonderful events and talk to folks like you. So there's a bunch of that social stuff that, I do a lot of blogging and things like that. So feel free to throw me a follow. A lot of crazy adventures as well. So in there, I have 5 kids. So my life is literally bananas, but I do try to automate as much as I can, especially with 5 kids and all the different sports schedules that we have. So it's a lot to have to manage and juggle around. So even automation in my personal life, it's a big proponent of that. So Nintex, who we are and kind of what we do here. John, you may have to, oh, there it is, finally, a little slow on my end there. Looks good. All right, so Who we are. Well, at Nintex, we have a very kind of simple and straight to the point mission statement, right? Improve the way that people work through process management and automation. So if you're completely new to Nintex, if that's the one thing you take away from that, I would feel very confident that you would understand kind of what we do here at Nintex at a high level. But to get a little bit deeper into it and kind of where we came from, kind of where we got our start and things like that, we were founded back in 2006 in Australia. We have a US headquarters in Bellevue, Washington. So right in the same area as like Microsoft and things like that. And we've been profitable since inception. So meaning that year over year, our customers have enjoyed working with us and continue to do so. We have a net promoter score, that NPS, which is over 75. I believe it's actually 78 the last time we checked, which means it's the customer saying, how likely are you to recommend this software or tool to a colleague or coworker? And that's the customer saying that, right? That's not me. That's not, John going out there and filling out, thousands of surveys and trying to buff our numbers or anything like that. It's the customers that use our product day in and day out. So it's really cool to be able to kind of look back at that and have happy customers, because that means that they enjoy what they're doing, and it makes my life and everybody else's life all the much better, because we get to do all kinds of fun things. We are continually acquiring newer companies, things like that. So the recent acquisition with AssureSign, so adding more capabilities into our platform. There is a lot that we could talk about, but again, for the sake of the conversation today, we're going to focus on a few things. We have over 800 employees worldwide. And that just all kind of points to just the ability to go to scale, right? Through a variety of different markets, right? So we're easy to use, powerful, the most complete platform around automation that you're going to see. We're already serving over 50% of the Fortune 500, and we have billions of processes that are actually executed across all of those platforms on an annual basis. We're in a lot of different countries as well, so we're not just based around here in the US. So with companies, again, looking and being kind of pressured into how do we look at automation, how do we transform digitally and things like that, what are some of the reasons that companies start to do those things, right? And there's a variety of reasons. What we have seen a lot of the times is around that cost reduction, right? The ability to start identifying things, and then also to, to eliminate paperwork, right? That's a lot of the times, a lot of those driving factors. Risk and compliance. I worked for a utility company. Compliance was a huge aspect of that. There's probably some sort of compliance in a lot of our lives that we have to kind of think about. And just that kind of that last point on there, right? That reduction of human error. I think that goes across everything. But that's a big driving factor as well. And then obviously, right, a lot of people want to point towards that increased productivity. Well, what can I gain out of doing something like this? So the idea is to, right, we want to increase productivity by kind of eliminating kind of those mundane things, those repetitive tasks, so that we can drive value in other areas. So why do organizations struggle then to digitally transform, right? We've been talking about digital transformation, what I feel like has been the better part of the last decade or two. And why is it that people still struggle with this? Well, there's kind of three different areas, again, of why people, or what we've seen of why organizations struggle. And that's, the lack of visibility, right? We don't know what we don't know. How many of us, have processes, or we interact with processes that are tucked away, siloed? We just don't know. We don't know the full extent or the full breadth of a process. That's a problem, right? Especially in larger enterprises. So we see that. The lack of resources as well, right? Especially given everything that's going on in the world right now, everything that's going on with the pandemic, resources are stretched thin. So the idea to transform at a rapid pace becomes even harder to do. So things became manual. They still remain manual. And then again, right, that kind of ties into the capabilities. What do you actually have available to you? What tools do you have? You probably have a lot of core systems, right? You probably have a lot of things at your disposal, but how do you make them all work together? How do you improve on those processes unless you have those tools at hand, right? So how would we then start looking at how do we approach things, right? And the traditional approach is, the discovery and the mapping of that is, we do those round tables and we talk about, well, what's the process? Nobody's going to document it anyways, or if they do, it's probably in somebody's, one note, and we just lose it over time. And then you try to automate it, right? And then you realize that it's going to be pretty code heavy. You're going to need some technical resources, things like that, which then ties into that slow time to value, that speed to market that just isn't there. And of course, the return on investment, well, if you've actually tracked it and you can actually measure that, that's a step in the right direction. But a lot of the times you realize it's expensive to be able to go out there and tie up resources to be able to go off and do those things. So at Nintex, we kind of have a slightly different approach here, right? So the way that we do the discovery and mapping, we actually have a tool for that, right? It's called Nintex Pro Map. So we make it so it's collaborative. We make it so it's easily shared out throughout the organization and also outside if need be. Very agile. It's a low code, no code platform. It's all drag and drop functionality. You're configuring connectors, you're not coding them. That speed to value, that speed to market, implementation takes days, right? Not months and years, right? You can spin up a solution in an afternoon, fine tune it, and you're off to the races the following week if need be. And it's affordable, right? The idea to scale with what your needs are and to be able to grow with that. So this way here, that total cost of ownership, that bottom line isn't an exorbitant amount of money. It's a matter of how do you balance all those resources and making sure that you're freeing up those resources where needed. So this is all great. Kind of where does Nintex sit inside of all of this? So you'll probably on here, right? You probably start to look at these systems and you're like, this is great, Jesse. Like I have so a few of these, or maybe you have all of them. Maybe you're unique and you only have one, right? Maybe you only operate inside of one of these kind of systems. And if so, that's great, right? But the majority of people, they're going to work with a variety of systems, right? We're going to add something new tomorrow. We're going to replace something else, the next day, so on and so forth. So with Nintex, kind of how we approach these things is, well, we sit in kind of the middle of everything. We are kind of that glue that helps those processes, that helps those systems interact with each other. So this way here, they can talk to each other. You can get system into your HRIS, but also maybe your CRM, and maybe also information into a homegrown system. Maybe you need to interact with Box or Dropbox, your file storage, things like that. Well, Nintex can help with that. And like I said, we start off with the ability to map and manage your processes. That's probably the first step that a lot of people will skip over, right? We know the process. We wrote it up on a whiteboard someplace. I know it. But the idea is well, what happens when that individual leaves the organization? They take that knowledge with them. So how do we not only map out the process, but how do we manage to it in the years to come? And we have a tool for that. On top of that, then we start to layer over, well, the automation. Once you've identified those processes, you've mapped them out, and you've identified them as a candidate for automation. Well, now we can start looking at how do we automate it. So we have automation around robotic process automation, which is RPA. We also do workflow automation, things with forms, digital forms, responsive forms, mobile applications, document generation inside of Salesforce and also outside of Salesforce, e-signature. We're partnered with Adobe. We also just acquired an e-signature company as well. And then last but not least, right, once you've automated it, it's probably going to be something you want to measure, right? The idea is going back and say, well, how good are we doing, right? How well am I doing my job? Because everybody wants to know that, if we automated it, did it actually improve kind of the way that we're doing things? And well, you're never going to know, right? Unless you actually start measuring, you have that baseline. So you can do that. We have Nintex Analytics that you can layer over top of everything else. And then down there at the bottom, that Nintex APIs and connectors. Really nice thing is of course, with all of the systems that are out there, we can't possibly create connectors for every single system. And given kind of the speed of the market and all the new things that are coming out, we can't keep up with it. So the idea is we offer an extensions framework, which allows you to build your own custom workflow actions that you can use inside of our systems and our platforms. That's really cool to be able to go off and do that. So from here though, right, I mean, what can we automate, right? What can we help facilitate and build out for you? There's a ton of different use cases, but I think the biggest thing here is it's not just an IT tool, right? It's not just a tool that a dev is going to use. I've worked with a lot of administrators in local school districts that have used Nintex. I worked for an organization where the biggest proponent of Nintex was actually our marketing department. They would go off and make these wonderful forms, all these different processes. So this way here, they can have collect all the collateral that they need and then be able to create all the marketing material for all the things that they were going off and doing. So it's not just an IT tool, not just for onboarding people and things like that. Those are great use cases, but there's so much more that you can go off and do with that. And in fact, right, it's not just, again, in the technology space, it's across a lot of different industries. I mean, everything from state and local government, retail, things like that, services, healthcare, manufacturing, everything. And there's a lot of different customers that we have. As I talked about before, we're already serving over 50% of the Fortune 500. But it's not just the customers that we have and that we support. Again, it's a partnership that we have with Cherry Bekaert and able to provide solutions out to the customers. And there's customers that we work with together as a joint kind of partnership. And see if this slides for you, John, you might have to take back over. But I wanted to kind of hand it back over to John and have him talk about all the wonderful things that Cherry Bekaert's doing and the customers that we share together and the solutions that we bring to the table.
Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate that high-level overview of the Nintex platform. And yeah, your customer list is pretty impressive. And then this slide is really around some of the customers that Nintex and Cherry Bekaert serve together. And again, it's kind of across a lot of different industries. A lot of different groups, and we're doing a lot of different processes. So I'll just highlight a couple here. One is with the Anthem Healthcare Group. We're helping them with their public speaking process. So it's really if a doctor or someone within the organization, an executive, is going to be speaking to the public that needs to go through the corporate communications department, and they need to upload that presentation for review and things like that. So there's a process there around public speaking and communications, so that we help them with an Nintex process there. Dominion Energy, we're doing a lot there with compliance and making sure that that they're in compliance and audit perspective. Nexstar Media Group, I'm gonna demo that today a little bit. It's all around their capital expense budgeting and capital expense process. So just a lot of different things that we've done for these different companies. And right in the middle is Cherry Bekaert. We drink our own Kool-Aid, meaning we've got Nintex ProMap that we're using, and some other things for process mapping, and then some business processes around proposals and solutions there. So all right, next slide is really, I just wanted to talk through just a couple different real world use cases. So we're going to get into some demos now as to real world use cases. So pay attention if some of these might stick out to you and speak to you, then we'll go through it together and ask any questions that you may have. Here are some common, these are not the demos that I'm going to go through, but these are some common use cases that we've done in the past. A big one is employee onboarding. So new employees, a lot of forms, a lot of approvals, a lot of things that you've got to do from an employee onboarding perspective. And I included just kind of a list of actors in each of these use cases because, as Jesse pointed out, it's not just about IT. It's not just about that. It's truly integrated into all areas of the business and users throughout the business and organization. So the new employee, external, right, to the customer. External to the organization. So communications externally, HR representative internal, maybe external HR person, IT, hiring manager, executive management, that sort of thing. So employee onboarding is a big use case that we've seen and things that we've done. Next is professional services. This is around, proposals, signed contracts, e-signatures, gathering signatures, things like that. So again, internal process and communicating externally with clients and customers and prospects. And then lastly, again, is compliance and audit tracking. So documented processes and reviews and approvals and issue resolution, issue tracking, things like that. Incident management. So again, this could be external, it could be internal, customers, service staff, management, audit, compliance. I think the key thing that I want to get across here is that Nintex is really not just an internal process mechanism. It truly can, extend to the borders of your partners and your customers and things like that. So, maybe some of the limitations on other platforms, Nintex is beyond the borders of your organization. So I think that's some of the key takeaways that hopefully you'll get out of this today's session. All right, so let's get into, we're going to talk through 3 use cases, and I'm going to start with a simple, and then I'll go to maybe a more complex and more in-depth view on the capital expense piece, and then the last one will be a truly kind of an end-to-end workflow, including, customer or patient information. So this first one is just a really simple medical form. So I'm going to switch over to my browser. Hopefully this works out okay. You've got this medical history questionnaire, and this was something that was stood up very, very quickly. This is obviously, this is external, meaning that anyone can get to this to fill out. So you can share this, with clients or patients or, just as a demo. But basically, this is just a quick form, and this is all within the Nintex Workflow Cloud solution. So this is the Nintex Cloud solution. Nintex can run obviously on-premise or in the cloud. So I'm not really that young, but I'm gonna pretend I am. And so then you can answer anything that you want to here, put in a date, nice date picker, and then a signature. So this is kind of an e-signature block that you can sign, and then you put in your email address here, and this is just a quick and easy form submission, and then you click submit, and then it's going to communicate with you through email notification. So this is just a really simple Nintex workflow, a form and workflow engine. So this is a lot of what the Nintex Workflow Cloud offers, and so I should in a minute or two I should expect an email to pop through, basically saying, hey, you filled out this form, and here's the submission. So that was kind of the first really simple process. So it's just a form. You fill out the form, and then people are notified when that form is filled out. So it could be, it could go to the submitter. It could go to your internal, queuing or staff to schedule this person. They could be waiting in the waiting room. Could be running on an iPad or something in the waiting room. It could be, at a kiosk or something. So as you think about digitally transforming, that's really what the Nintex Workflow Cloud can help with. So that's just again a really simple example, and the technologies in use here are really the Nintex Workflow Cloud, and that's the public form that you saw, and then the Nintex Workflow Engine. So that's the engine behind the scenes taking that form submission and communicating the results to either the submitter and or the internal team. There's also kind of the e-signature block, and then there's the document generation piece. So what actually gets sent is a PDF, and that PDF is generated from the answers that were taken. And this is on the screen here is just a sample of what that PDF looks like. All right, so that's a really, really simple use case. I'm going to move into something a little bit more complex. And Jesse, I apologize that these diagrams were not made in ProMap. So, this was maybe before we became really, really proficient in ProMap. So I apologize ahead of time.
That's all right. We'll let it slide.
Yeah. So ProMap is a great tool for mapping out your processes, similar to some of these diagrams. But the nice thing about ProMap is you actually add a lot of the steps and actions and tasks behind the scenes, and then basically magically you press the button and it creates your workflow for you. So it's not just a pretty diagramming tool, it truly does help you get off the ground from a workflow generation perspective. And so as we've in the past done these simple diagrams using Lucidchart or Visio or some other tool, ProMap is what we use now to actually jumpstart our development process within the Nintex Workflow Cloud environment. So, all right, this is a capital expense system, and this is really used to track capital appropriation requests or capital expense requests. But you start out with loading the year's budgets. So this was a media company, and we have to load all their stations. They're one of the largest, if not the largest, media company across the nation that owns most of the local stations across the country, and so local TV stations and things like that. So we built a solution for them. They were managing a $70 million capital expense, budget process, and then they acquired someone a couple years ago, and we expanded it, and it scaled. To Jesse's point around scaling, scaled it to double that, 135 million in budget and capital appropriation requests. So just a lot of different stations are using the system, the corporate environment, they're using the system. But the key is really to load your budgets ahead of time to say, all right, this is what we budgeted by station and for what spend. And then the capital appropriation requests are made, or the capital expense requests are made against those budgets. And there's also kind of a contingency bucket, if you will, that you can pull from. So here's just a high level diagram of the process and the system. But essentially these the budgets and business units are loaded at the beginning of the year, and then capital requests come in. There's an approval process that we go through with the Nintex Forms and Workflow engine. And then once it's finally approved, that capital expense and appropriation request is finally approved, it becomes a capital project. And so that capital project, the neat thing about the Nintex platform, and as Jesse mentioned in that circle diagram, at the bottom, there's that API section, and we're leveraging that API section to actually connect to their ERP system to send those capital project requests up to their ERP system. And this customer happens to use Microsoft Dynamics AX as their ERP system, and so we're actually setting those capital projects up to the AX system for them to track their expenses, their purchases against those projects. So this is the kind of the intake process, and then there's also the feedback loop around the actual spend against those capital appropriation requests, and we're reporting on those. And if there's an overage or if there's a surplus, then we're keeping track of those balances and notifying the people that had originally submitted the request that, hey, you said you were going to spend $100,000, but you only spent $80,000. What do you want to do with the $20,000 that you had reserved? And they can either put it back into contingency, or they can reserve that for future spend in that budget as well. So it's just a very neat, comprehensive capital expense system, and just very involved, but really built upon. And right now it's in the their on-premise environment, using Nintex Forms and Workflows and some other technologies too, but mainly Nintex forms and workflows built on SharePoint. So let me go ahead and I'll demo this. I'm going to pull this system up kind of in their development environment, and so this is kind of what their capital appropriation request dashboard looks like. Their development environment may be a little bit outdated, but essentially you've got your business units with their budgets, and so you can see that, you know, I've got a couple different budget buckets in here. And within the dashboard, I want to initiate a new request. So I'm going to click this new item. And again, the data is really housed within their SharePoint environment, but all these forms and all the workflows are running in the Nintex area. So the forms and workflow. So here's a capital appropriations request. So this is, again, a Nintex form that we've developed. They would choose a business unit, and let's just say we're going to use the Honolulu office, and this is going to be an IT spend. This is a new request, and it's IT, and we're going to buy new servers. And then you basically choose your category. So we'll just do this, and I'm going to go against the Honolulu budget, and let's just say it's, I don't know, IT capital spend here. I've got $10,000 budgeted within this bucket, and I plan to have it in service in, let's say, late August. Okay, so the budget date is basically what month or what quarter that this spend is projected to be, and then in here is where I'm going to say, you know, Adele Binford 2000, and I'm going to spend that in Q3, and I'm going to spend, let's just say, $8,000 on the new server. So it's doing, you know, math and subbing it up. If we've got tax rate, we can do, you know, 6.75 or 9.7, whatever your tax rate is, and then it'll do the calculation plus shipping and handling, and then it'll total it out for you. So let's just use 7% as the tax rate, calculates tax, and gives you the total budget. This is where, you know, new servers to be installed and old equipment to be removed and disposed. So, and then this is where they would add an attachment basically saying, hey, we've got a purchase request, or we've got a quote or a proposal from a vendor from Dell to actually do this work. And so this is where they would add the attachment for that actual purchase request. And so we add that attachment in here, and then they click save. So now when the form is saved and submitted, it essentially then becomes a capital appropriation request. And you can see that right here, it's starred. It's for the new servers. It does not have a CAR number yet, neither is it approved. It's still in the new status. So right now, what's happening in the background is the Nintex workflow engine is picking up this new CAR, sending it, looking up the business unit, and within the business unit, there's a level of approvals, and each business unit will have different approvers on that business unit assigned. And those approvers then will go through, get notified, and they can do what's called lazy approval, meaning they'll get an email and they can just send back a response via email saying this is approved, and it will then kick off to the next step in the workflow. Or they can click the link to come back to this request. So if they wanted to actually come back to this request, they can actually come to the request and view it in detail, and then they can click approve at the bottom if they so choose. So there's kind of two different ways of going about the approval process. What Nintex calls the lazy approval is really because you want to be lazy and you just want to send an email back saying it's approved, and then it moves on to the next step, or you actually pull it up in the form and approve it there. So those are the two different ways of approving it. Once it goes through all the approvals, and it goes all the way up to the Executive Vice President of Finance, and he will go ahead and approve it. He's going to go ahead and approve it, and it's going to become a capital project. And so I'll just give you just a sneak peek into some of the workflow steps that are happening kind of behind the scenes around this capital appropriation request. So again, going through a lot of the approval processes, so depends on kind of what phase it goes through, what type of request it is, and then it goes through a lot of approval process. I've got some of that hidden here. But I think one of the key things is that this is not just a standalone process, it's truly integrated into their overall ERP process. Here you can see the AX snippet. So this is the snippet that shows within the process where we are actually executing a stored procedure, a SQL stored procedure, sending up this capital appropriation project header. The line is down here, line items. So if there's multiple servers or multiple line items, we're sending all those line items in detail. And then you can see this is a loop. So basically it's going through each line item and sending those up. And then if there's tax, then it sends up a line item for tax. If there's shipping and handling, it sends up a line item for shipping and handling. And then it checks for any errors, and then it wraps up that process. So the neat thing is that, again, as Jesse mentioned, this is kind of a low code, no code type solution where you can drag and drop just a lot of these steps onto the canvas and put them in the process that you want to do. So again, there's looping, there's conditional statements like if statements, there's all the traditional kind of programming things, but it's really in a WYSIWYG or a drag and drop low code, no code type environment. So this is just a sneak peek as to what the workflow engine and how you would build out, kind of workflow steps. So hopefully this is kind of helpful to see through that. Okay, so again, this was SharePoint, Nintex on-premise, public, there was Forms, Nintex Workflow Engine, ERP integration. So that was some of the key takeaways from that use case. The third use case is really around compliance and capturing e-signature. If you've bought a house or rented an apartment or things like that, I'm sure you've gotten e-signature requests in your inbox. And so that's kind of what I want to show in this last use case. So essentially what's happened is in this environment, it's again, a demo environment, and a compliance agreement has been sent to the customer. And so the customer is, I'll pull up my email here so we can look at what this compliance agreement looks like. So here I got the compliance agreement in my inbox, and here it says, okay, review and sign. So it's just got some high level things. You can also looks like you can also delegate if this was not meant for you, it's meant for, or maybe you want someone on your staff, then you can delegate that to someone. But again, this is through the Adobe Sign and the Nintex Sign process. But if I click the review and sign here, it's basically going to take me then to the online document. And you've all seen the online document. Again, this is powered by Adobe Sign, where you start the process and you can walk through the agreement, things like that. You can make comments, but when it's all said and done and you agree, then you basically click in here and you can do an e-signature, or you can cause it to sign. But what's really neat is that it knows who I am because the link is specific to me, and it knew my email address as well. So here I can basically fill out the form, sign the document, sign it, and we're all set. So now again, this is going to go back to our compliance department as an agreement, showing that you've agreed, and we can do a bunch of different workflow steps kind of behind the scenes in the organization to kind of move this process along. So I've given you just kind of a sneak peek into just 3 different use cases that demoed 3 different use cases, talked about a couple others. Jesse's got that slide on all the different ones that we see a lot of. But this is just a quick snapshot of a lot of the ones, some of the ones that we've done for customers. And there's a whole lot more. This kind of just scratches the surface around the, what we've done with Nintex and things like that. So if there's a business case or an organizational, use case that you all can think of that I haven't mentioned or haven't talked about, but is a pain point for you, we would love to find out about it and see if Nintex is a potential fit, because it is a holistic platform that we can help leverage for you. Okay, wow, look at that. We've just gone through 45 minutes of a lot of talk, but I guess at this point in time, I want to kind of open it up for any questions or Q&A session. And also, just if you want to capture this screen, please reach out to me or Aaron Hilsman on my team, or Eric Eklund. Eric Eklund is an account manager with us. Again, I'm the practice lead, and Aaron Hilsman is an architect that uses Nintex a lot. And then you met Jesse from Nintex, who's our Nintex relationship partner and architect as well. So I'm going to open it up for questions. Aaron, have you received any questions so far that we can tackle?
Yeah, we've got one that was asking how long does it take to implement something like that, that capital expense solution?
Yeah, the nice thing is, Jesse mentioned, what we try and do is build it in building blocks and not just, all at one point in time. So what we did is we built the budgeting process and the approval process, and then we built the integration to AX, and then we built the whole reporting and feedback loop for outstanding balances and overages and things like that. So we built it actually over a couple of years, but it really only took a couple months, 2 to 3 months to couple weeks really to get it up and going, but really 2 to 3 months to make it live in production and tested and certified. Since this is going out to a large audience within the organization, we want to make sure that it's UAT tested, it's unit tested, user acceptance tested, and it will scale. So it took us really kind of 2 to 3 months at different points in times and chunks, but all said and done, a lot of the development was done pretty quickly. And I'm sure, Jesse, you've seen a lot of this stuff being built pretty quickly. It's just operationalizing it and productionizing it is really the key part, and making sure it's right.
Yeah, that's definitely the approach of kind of taking it of a more compartmental approach of, hey, here's this building block of functionality, and implement it, put it through the ringer, right? Test it out, implement it, and you're off to the races. The really nice thing is too, and you kind of hit on it, is since it is, more beneficial to take that approach, that means that you can take those building blocks and apply them elsewhere in other, processes and things like that. Because when you kind of boil things down, this is the way I think about solutions, is when you boil things down, right? It's, I need to issue out a task to somebody, right? I need feedback. I need some sort of response. That probably happens in numerous processes, right? So being able to take kind of that approach and how you do it and how an organization builds that out, well, now you have that. Now you kind of have like that, kind of like in a development sense, right? You have that function, right? You have that method of how you're doing it. So now you can kind of take that and use it someplace else. Also, too, I've seen organizations take the same process and make it generic, so that way there are multiple kind of departments inside of that organization can leverage it, but just kind of small tweaks here and there. So to your point, right, something like that is as massive as capital expenses can be, and how entwined it can be with who needs to sign off on it, when they need to sign off on it, all that stuff. It becomes much more palatable to consume from a development standpoint, simply because the solution is that much easier to kind of manage and maintain, kind of over the development cycles.
Yeah, I think maybe a second part to the question could be, that capital expense project that we did for this company, and we've done another capital expense or CapEx project for another company as well. it's not just, we haven't, productized it, meaning we can just kind of re-implement it yet with another customer, but all the learnings that we do have with those two other customers, has really, could really help us, implement something really, really quickly, somewhere else. So the learnings that we have is fantastic. As far as, productizing it, we could make it a little bit more generic and maybe go to market with something like that built on the Nintex platform, but we haven't yet to this point. But obviously, once you've done it once or twice, it's going to be, really, really fast the third time. So the learning curve, is done at that point in time. So really good question about the development. Again, a lot of the development goes really, really quickly in Nintex. It's more about, well, we want to tweak it to do this, or we want to test it to do that. So, the nice thing about the agile working environment and a low code, no code, you can change it rapidly. And so we'll typically prototype or proof of concept something pretty quickly and then tweak it along the way based on feedback that we get. So, it's an iterative process rather than, a big waterfall type process within the Nintex space. So really good question.
Yeah, and there's another one related to, is Nintex a good solution for, say, a small business or a nonprofit? And that might be a good one for both of you.
Yeah, there is some upfront software costs and ongoing licensing costs with the Nintex platform, but really, I mean, the nice thing is that it scales beautifully. The CapEx system was an on-premise system, but basically we built it out for a company managing 70 million in CapEx, and then when they acquired and doubled their size, we didn't have to re-architect it, right? It just scaled to double basically what their size was. We have to make sure the infrastructure can handle it and that sort of thing, and then obviously in the cloud, that's going to be we're going to be able to handle it within the cloud, the Nintex Workflow Cloud, because that's completely elastic. But I think it's great for small and medium-sized businesses, but we've seen a lot of traction. Obviously, Jesse, with the larger organizations, since you're in 50% of the Fortune 500. So it will work in any environment. There's just a little upfront cost and some ongoing software costs, but that's par for the course. It's really, really small.
Yeah, I've had conversations with nonprofit organizations. I can't think of them off the top of my head. Of course, I'm trying to find them in my my notes, but unfortunately, I can't think of it. But I know I've talked to a few, and it's really about kind of like exactly what you said, John. It's all about trying to fit that need and that use case. I guarantee you we can help facilitate something. Just is it the right fit, right? Is it something that is going to help and be beneficial, which I would say it would be, but everybody has different opinions. So I mean, it's definitely worth a conversation. I think I would say I would recommend reach out to John, like any other questions or anything like that, maybe have a follow-up conversation. But yeah, I mean, we work with, everything down to, school districts and things like that, all the way up to, the big Fortune 500 companies. So absolutely. Yeah. Everybody has processes.
I think the other thing about, small versus medium versus large organization, if you're a small organization, but you do a lot of communications, proposal, the whole process around document signing or e-signing, as soon as you get into DocuSign or paying licensing or fees around that, you get a tool like a DocuSign, but you don't get the overall workflow engine that you would with like an Nintex. So as soon as you start trying to piece things together with a DocuSign or some, kind of low cost, workflow engine, you might as well have just spent the money on the Nintex platform. So I would say it's really more catered to small and medium-sized organizations. and nonprofits if they do a lot of, kind of workflow outside their borders, if you will. Good questions. All
and
right.
I've got one, if we want to do one more quick one.
Yeah, sure.
They had a question about, love to see an example of SAP integration, but I don't know if we could show maybe one of the actions or even the SQL action or something to kind of show how it does that interconnectivity. But in general, my response was based around the out of the box actions.
Jesse, on the slide, I know you showed a lot of different systems they interact with. For the AX integration, we used kind of your web API or your SQL integration. It was a database integration.
Yep.
For SAP, do you have something like out of the box or a connector? I'm trying to think. I don't think we've used the SAP connector. If you do have one, I think we've done is through either database or file transfer.
Right, exactly that. Yeah, so SAP is definitely one of those high demand ones that we are building out. So it will be in product, so it'll be out of the box. It'll be a connector that you just configure. We have a lot of use cases and examples and papers and all that stuff, write-ups about how to connect the two. So if you wanted to look at like an extension, if you want to use kind of like that reusability, kind of build your own workflow action, you can certainly do that. You could always go through the web API, right? That is obviously a viable solution as well. But I mean, we do have blogs and things like that on some use cases. We also have in our solutions gallery, so it's just gallery.nintex.com. There are some kind of pre-built workflows that can be pulled down and take a look at about how we interact with it. They're more focused around like vendor onboarding as kind of like a generic use case, but it still kind of shows at a high level what that could look like or what you wanted to do or how to approach it. And then from there, like I said, there's a few blogs out there about, getting users into, Salesforce, but then also interacting with like SAP, things like that, and, leveraging Theobald, this kind of middleware. So we do that on the Nintex Workflow Cloud side, but also to the K2 side of the house as well. So definitely something we can handle, definitely something that we can do. Again, kind of just goes back to that idea that I just talked about before. I think, we're now getting into that kind of part of, maybe we need to extend the conversation a little bit deeper into, kind of next steps and continue on the conversation. These are some really good questions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks team for joining. Thanks Aaron for facilitating the questions. Thank you Jesse for being part of this. Thank you for being a great partner with Cherry Bekaert and Nintex. We appreciate your partnership, and we love solving problems for our customers together. Again, if you have questions, or please reach out to me. Again, john.schrader@cbh.com, or Aaron Hillsman or Eric Eklund. And then Jesse, we'll get Jesse involved as we need to. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. If you have further questions, don't hesitate to email me, and then we can go from there.